We're planning to have a micro-hydro, community-owned hydro turbine at the outlet of the Harlaw reservoir. We began to look for what could we use in our area that would allow us to generate income so that the parent Molleson Village Trust wouldn't be entirely reliant on grants to be able to realise our local regeneration vision.
This site was not the original one that I had in mind, and I moved to the area and I started walking around with my family, and I could hear water flowing between the two reservoirs just up there, Harlaw and Fleetmuir, and I thought that would be the site that would make the best for hydro potential. But it actually turned out that when we were coming along, my husband said, "This is a dam, let's look down here," and when we looked down here we found all this and realised that there used to be a 19th century hydro project here.
The turbine house that we're going to build is marked out by these 4 pegs here, and it'll take the water from the pipe that comes through the bottom of the dam, will come through here, it will come into the turbine, and it will go out into the water channel down there. In the turbine house there'll be a generator, there'll be a whole lot of control system, and the electricity will go up the hill to the national grid. The power point where we will be connecting, so this is a connection onto the grid with a transformer, a 3-phase link, which is absolutely essential to be able to get any money through the FIT scheme. And we're fortunate, ours is within about 100 metres of the turbine, so that will be relatively easy, and we've got a grid connection now paid for at an affordable price. But a serious consideration for others looking at hydro schemes is where is the grid and how easily can you connect to it. When thinking about a hydro scheme is the water that you're wanting to use. If it's a run-of-river scheme, then you will only be allowed to use a certain percentage of the water because the SEPA are required to make it carry on looking like a river. We're very fortunate here. We're taking all the water that comes out of the reservoir before it goes into the river.
Some communities are not able to use any reserves, and the thing about this community is that we had a farmers market that meets once a month and we own the stalls and we manage the farmers market. So although it doesn't make a huge amount of money, it makes just enough to be able to have a little trickle of funding that allowed us not to have to take out any kind of loan to get to the pre-capital stage.
We were in a position where we were looking for about £300,000, and a combination of Lynn and Community Energy Scotland came up with the Industrial Providence Society. Having got that in place as a concept, we then set about raising the money. This involved us in producing a prospectus. We felt that we had to convince enough people that we were worth supporting. That was step 1. Step 2 was to get people to come and at least look at it. And we launched sort of a local campaign. The local newspaper, the Curry and Balerna News, helped a lot in that area. We put posters up, we put banners up at the end of the road, and we leafleted with a flyer. We did everything we could to make sure people knew. The net result, we then launched and had a share launch at the beginning of April last year. The initial take-up, the fact that we got started, the fact that we had enough support from the village trust financially to do the basics. So we had to pay for one or two things like sort of the water license from SEPA and so forth, and environmental studies, things like that. So we needed to pay for one or two things, but we did as much as we could with our own resources. A number of people gave their time and their skills to sort of doing the drawings, doing the planning permission, and those things. That went well. Because there was a group of people who were involved and interested. The share issue was a kind of a big watershed, because that's when we went from being a small sort of group that were trying to get something going to actually a bigger enterprise that now had some money to do something. And one of the big pluses from having set up an Industrial Providence Society is we now have a much wider community. We have a community of about 240 members. You explain to the community, you don't catch them by surprise. Explain to them, consult them, make sure that they know what you're thinking about, give them a chance to input. If you're raising money, I would strongly recommend the IPS model. It is not only a very good way of raising money, but it is a very good way of building people into the programme, into extending your community and getting people into it. And then when it comes to actually doing the thing, at the right time, get a good design engineer supporting you on the technical side and the contractual side of it. Has taken a long time. If you just work out how long you think it will take longer. So that is just the one big lesson that is. We started off, we knew we had to get planning permission, we knew we had to get a grid connection, we had to get permission to use the water, and we needed a lease. And we thought, well, those were the big things. Well, we now have an archaeologist, we've done an environmental survey, we've got to get a forester in to look at trees. It just keeps growing.
We've had to find ourselves rushing for certain deadlines just to make sure that we can still maintain our financial projections. So that's something I've learned. You need to keep an eye on the press releases that are coming out of the Department for Energy. Somebody just needs to be watching that a little bit and thinking, oh, okay, this looks like this is definitely going to change. About the personal tax schemes available through HMRC, we would have made more of those in the lead up to the event. We couldn't have fitted any more people into the hall anyway, but I think that it took a long time for people to actually realise that we were telling them, you can put money into this scheme, and provided you put in more than a certain amount and you keep it in for a certain length of time, you could get potentially 50% of your investment back, plus the 4% that we were offering in terms of the defined benefit through the IPS scheme.
There are a number of things. There is the Lerner Village Trust has got a few projects on the go. One in particular is the redevelopment, or reclamation really, of a walled garden, which we're hoping to convert into a community garden, which will have a mixture of allotments and is generally a community garden. And that's a fairly big exercise. We're looking for funding in a number of places, but we will contribute to that.
I think there's a tendency within communities to give too many small grants, and you don't get anything very sustainable that can keep going. The walled garden's different because that can become a long-term growing project. It can produce produce that can be sold at the market, that can be given to people. Box schemes can develop, all sorts of things like that. But for me, I'd be looking for things that can become self-sustaining projects rather than lots and lots of small grants. But these are things that people will have to work out. That if any project sets up and is using this money to further aims within a community, it's really important that we constantly check with the community.
One obviously is making it happen, and we're in process, as we described, to do that. We've also committed ourselves to doing an educational sort of display up at the Ranger Centre, so that school kids and others can see what's happening. They can see the sort of and just learn from it. And the local schools are very interested in that. The other one obviously is working with the Village Trust to see how we use the money once it starts coming on stream.